you're waiting. The travel time alone is going to kill you.
They will be slipping on to the protective class, the ISO issues, and everyone will be paying higher home insurance and all that. But really, fire calls is not your business as much as EMS calls. I mean, the majority of your calls are EMS calls. And we're talking about someone laying on a floor in need of an EMS call and us not getting an ambulance out locally because we don't have the volunteers.
Luckily, we haven't run into that one.
Yeah, right. But I'm just, when the volunteers just stop showing up because the liability is too much and the training's too much and the world is too busy for people to show up and do this work, I just don't know where we go. I'm just thinking, where are we 10 years from now? Where are we 20 years from now? A little scary. Very good. Thank you both again for your great budgets, working very hard and working with the town. Much appreciated. It's a good way of doing business. Now the budget you've all been waiting for. The Selectmen's budget. I haven't cut my salary yet. But we're coming in with a 0.81% increase. Last year we were able to take advantage of a new administrative assistant coming in at a newbie rate, so that helped our budget. This year we don't have that benefit. The only increase you'll see is part-time clerical. We do have a need that now that Sandy's here a year and she's taking some vacation time, well earned, by the way. You're doing a great job in your seat. But when Sandy's out, I really do need, at least for a couple hours a day, someone to be in the office collecting some calls and sending out your packets and things like that. I typically am sitting there answering the phone calls myself when Sandy can't be there. But we do need some increase. So we've put $500 back in. There was a time that was thousands and thousands of dollars. I think $3,000 or $4,000 when I came onto the job. This is my fourth budget. We knocked that way down, but we have to bring it way up again. Everything else is one and the same, as you can see. Are there any questions?
What is the part-time clerical? What's the wage for that?
Who do we pay? Hourly? I don't have the detail on that. Do you happen to know?
You know what? I'll be happy to check on that and get and report.
It's not much more than minimum. It might be $12.
Well, it depends on who we use.
Yeah. Do you happen to know? We were fortunate to have Esther Williams, who is on our wall over there, who's worked in this town hall for many, many decades. We're lucky enough to have her come in for a couple hours a day the last time we needed her. But I don't know.
I think it's very important.
It is.
I think that people who come, even those who come unannounced, shouldn't see a clipboard on the door. There should be a person there. And so I think $500 is well worth it. We probably should have more.
I was going to say, if you want me to guarantee there'll never be a clipboard on there, I'm going to need thousands and thousands. I think I agree. My business is customer service, but I think it's the nature of municipal government these days as well. We've put clipboards on more than just the first selectman's door in this building over the year, with not enough staff to cover different departments. So,
well, your deputy's very loyal. So.
He's got nothing to do.
And highly compensated.
So, any other questions? We'll try to get you that number, Roseanne, offline, and then we'll insert it later in the next meeting. So 114 is our last budget tonight. And Anna generally takes this and talks about where we are. If you want to run through it, Anna.
Sure. So the first account is payroll taxes, and that's the percent of wages. Some good news for workers' comp. We're actually going to see a 3% decrease over our current fiscal year premiums, and that's because we've just done very well with not having claims. So, we're happy about that. But also included in that account is some funding for, like, every year they do a payroll audit. And so just if we're over, if our salary estimates weren't high enough, then we get an extra bill. And the difficult thing to project is the overtime that we have. So I just added 10,000 for that purpose. The next account is pension, and every year we have an actuarial evaluation done, and in that is the recommended annual required contribution. And of course that goes up every year because of increases in wages. And so that's why you see an increase there. And it also includes funding for the defined contribution plan, which, that one we're paying as you go.
So that's the match, like a 401k type of match?
Right,
Okay.
yes. Okay. And then we have life insurance policies of varying amounts for different groups. And we also have long-term disability for police, fire, and unaffiliated employees. Health insurance, the rate that we started, the increase that we started the budget process with is 15.84%. As we go through the next couple of months, we're going to hopefully refine that number. Our insurance consultant does have an RFP out on the streets to see if about possibly getting better rates for us. And we've been struggling over the last few years with the claims, and we're self-insured, and we've been struggling with the claims. So with the RFP, we're also requesting that they get a fully insured rate. We just want to, compare the two. And then retirement liability. It's really a great thing when we have advance notice and we know which employees are planning to retire. And so we have a lot of employees that are getting to the age where they can start to retire. As a matter of fact, I believe it was yesterday we received from one of our UPSU members that he'll be retiring. He's actually a water employee. It doesn't affect this particular budget. So he's leaving on June 1st. And we're expecting an employee in our tax department to submit paperwork to retire as of April 1st. So we found that if we, put aside some funds, when employees leave, we'll have the ability to pay any accrued leave that they have on the books. Every year, as of June 30th, we run this tally, and the number is it's over $800,000. This is all our employee groups. What we've started to do to make when employees leave a little bit more palatable for actually both the town and the employee is we're paying out upon retirement 25% of their accrued leave. The following July 1st, 50%, and then yet one more July later, the remaining 25%. So in the $100,000 that we have for next year's budget, a little over 20,000 of that is already committed, meaning employees that have already left that we're still paying out their accrued leave.
So that explains why you've only expended 37% of it so far this year, because you'll be spending it in the end of June for the people who are waiting for the next payment.
Well, actually, we pay them in July, so that will actually come out of this year's budget. But like between now and the end of the year, like I already mentioned, well, actually, we also have firefighter Pringle is leaving.
And across the hall.
I mentioned her,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, we have more employees that are starting to leave, and so it's becoming reality. So we're putting funds in the budget so that, we have the resources available. Everybody's favorite, legal services. We did make a reduction in this account in the general government area. we've been doing very well this fiscal year, and so we did that. Putting together, legal budget is very difficult, because you just never know what the expenses are gonna be. But I do keep a worksheet of it with a 10-year history, and so I look at that, I look at, where we are fiscal year to date, in order to have a comfort level of how we budget for these. Unemployment compensation, we pay as you go, so if we get hit up with a claim, this number has more or less worked very well for us, although last fiscal year we did go over the 10,000, but because we had a rather heavy year, but the 10,000 has seemed to work for us over time. Eviction, moving and storage, if somebody in this town gets evicted, we are by statute responsible to pay, for moving items out of their residence and putting them in storage. So this is what we keep a small amount for that purpose. Every year we have to, the indices is actually having an audit of all of the land records conducted, and the individual that's been doing it has been doing it for many years and maintained the same rate.
Who does that?
Bill Willett.
Bill Willits does that. He's a local
Right.
fellow, and what a service he provides. Other towns pay 2 or 3 times this
Easily.
amount, minimum. Small towns pay that. So we appreciate Mr. Willits and
Very much so.
his services.
And so the next account is our liability insurances, and we have, with our rate lock, we were guaranteed a 3% premium increase, but we also include $10,000 in here to meet any insurance deductibles we have. Like, for example, when one of our vehicles gets in an accident, that's a $500 deductible, and then on the property lines, it's it can be as much as $5,000.
So we've been holding the line, not only in this liability line, but the workman's comp line. In past years, you might remember, what was that, 10% increases, or were we up to 15?
They were higher.
They were 15. I didn't tell you, Anna, I was at COST yesterday, Council of Small Towns, and our insurance provider, Kerma, our insurance company, that's kind of a mutual run by 4 municipalities in the state, they came running over to me and said, "How do you like your numbers this year?" And they're very excited, as I am, of course, to present these numbers to you. We were trending at 15% on increased liability. It was after major storms and building of boardwalks and all the problems that we had with natural disasters. But that and the workman's comp, by the way, we received an award from Kerma with our health and safety committee received the award on behalf of the town, that our numbers are trending way down. Safety numbers are way up, and injuries at work and workman's comp claims, et cetera, are plummeting way down. Our managers are doing a great job of safety training and making sure the workplaces are properly positioned so people don't get hurt. And I got to tell you, it's also a lot of luck. Our cops are doing a physical job, and sometimes if they get in a scuffle or they're breaking down a door with their shoulder, they get hurt. And that's workman's comp claims that have actually just not come in the last couple of 3 years. So,
And actually, with that award, we received a $2,500 little grant. So we'll use that towards the next health and safety event that we have.
which is coming up in May. So I just wanted to point out that we're really trending, and if you're just sitting here looking at the snapshot, you don't realize how bad it was with increases. I came to the office, we had a 3-year 15% increase in our liability insurance, and very happy to see that's coming down a little bit. We've worked hard with them.
And then, employee assistance, it's a fee we pay so that in the event we have any employees that, need to go for the counseling, they can. We do keep some funds available for townwide management training, professional development. And then all of, the next account is the dues that we pay in various organizations that the town belongs to. And for several years now, they've all been maintaining the line. And then the reprinting the ordinances, actually, we are in the process of having them codified, and once that process is completed, they'll be available, all the ordinances will be available on time, online, excuse me, on time.
I believe by law, we're required also to keep them.
That's correct.
In town hall and to provide copies if they're asked.
We do,
They're
we will have a hard copy, and then that's the plan. If anyone asks for a hard copy, we will provide them with one.
And we have it electronically now, so we can
Yeah.
print as we need instead of
Right.
printing up 100
Exactly.
at a
And-
significant
And
cost.
going through this
Yeah.
process is like getting anything that's outdated up to date, and it's quite the process, because the company that's doing it is finished, and now our attorneys have to review everything that they've done and say that,
Mhm.
everything looks perfect.
Or not,
or
as we're
not.
discovering.
So,
As we just, well, if they start simplifying, especially those ordinances, and, Roseanne, you've been here for at least 100 years worth of ordinances. When they start taking away the history, and that's our only history, your only history right now, but when you're no longer sitting here someday, people are going to want to look back and say, well, how did we get here? And why do we get here? And if they start removing things, we're discovering that some things were missing when they were codifying. So we're going to make sure that that is accurate. It's really the history book of the town as far as ordinances and charter revisions go. So important. Any questions for Mrs. Johnson?
Under legal services, line 238, we don't actually have a conservation commission anymore. Should the name of that be changed to inland wetlands? Or is that a kind of a,
We use that
Minor
as inland
point.
wetlands, because they're the ones that use it all up. It actually, inland wetlands, and, yeah,
Natural resources.
okay,
we could change the name.
just thinking,
I don't know if that's easily changed,
well, I can go in and change
Yeah.
it.
wetlands. And they had a significant,
Yeah, I noticed that too.
couple applications that drove their budget way up. We're hoping this year will be a little quieter.
Hey, Mark, I noticed the seat was holding line. I know there was a couple years where we were
The seat
expecting, that was gonna go, a request was gonna go way up. Is that
in here?
We've
That's not in
had-
here.
that's not in here.
Isn't
not
that
in
the
here.
seat, the Southeastern Area
No,
Transit
it's in the
District?
Council of Government.
Are you
Southeast
in-
Area Transit District, it's under 245.
That is the
Yeah.
Southeastern Connecticut Council of
Council of
Governments, and
Government.
CCM and CRED and
Yeah,
and
that's-
Is
cost.
that's-
That's all the
You're on the
memberships.
wrong page.
That's not
included
true.
in
Oh,
there.
page
Oh,
one.
is seat in there?
Seat is in there.
2-2?
245.
245? That's where it is?
No, it's Southeastern, SECOG.
You're in the
No,
wrong.
it says Southeastern
No, it should be
Area
in there.
Transit District.
Yeah, it is seat.
245. 245.
You know what, Anna, and I think that number's different. I might
Mine
have to
doesn't
get you.
say that.
On page 4, it does.
You
No,
gotta
it
go
does
to
in
the
the supporting
detailed
description.
Anna, I might need,
Seat's just not listed.
I might need to change that number.
Because they're asking for 89.76.
Yeah.
And we left it at 63.11.
And I'm getting a little pressure,
Where is
that we're not paying our share.
Four.
I might need to change that number. Or not.
So is that 35,485, does that add up to what's listed in
Yes.
it does, so that hits up.
That's all the memberships the town pays into.
Well, you think there's gonna be an increase in seat?
There was an increase. We didn't identify it last year, so we shortchanged them. I think we're getting the bill this year for it. But I'll tell you what, SEED is part of course, the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and I think SEED's going to be hurting, and I wouldn't be surprised if 2018 sees the deletion of the route that goes through East Lyme. It is a far out route. They admit that they can't time it so people could take it to work and take it home from work, it really does only a few people any good. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'd rather have it in there and give some people the opportunity to use it than not have a regional bus service connection at all. It's only a couple, it's $6,000 or $8,000.
Well, I think that's quite a bit.
It is a lot of money.
For 4 or 5 people, which is, I never see more than 4 people
I know.
on that.
I know.
And there's no signage up for anybody who isn't specifically familiar with that to know where to catch the bus. If
If-
you were here at a hotel or something and you wanted to take the bus,
Stony,
there's no signage.
Stonington looked into, they have a lot more users. They have a lot of people who live in Pawcatuck and Stonington that take the bus to Foxwoods, the chambermaids, there's bartenders, there people that use the bus for those kind of services for employment. And the bus works in that capacity. Gets people to work, gets people home. Our bus routes don't work on timing-wise. But they were looking into buying Uber
Oh, yeah, you
for
mentioned
people,
that before.
specifically like there's a gal that lives in the neighborhood. She picks up the bus right across from the town hall every day, and I know that if I get rid of seat, that's her lifeline for wherever she goes. That's the only way she can get to. Maybe she does have a job that does coordinate well, and there's another fellow on the other side of town that takes the bus the opposite way. I mean, maybe we keep the line item here, and if we need to, identify the 4 people in town that use it and give them a stipend, a transportation stipend. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if we'd have 30 people showing up or
Well, I
130.
mentioned before, there's that green bitty bus that runs.
For
and
6
runs a
towns.
circuit.
Yeah, it runs to 6 towns.
We don't pay. I think it's called 9-town transit.
9
Yeah.
town transit, right.
Yeah.
The upside down
We don't
six.
pay into that, and so therefore they do
Yeah.
jump over the line. I think to Flanders. We don't pay into that, and they don't come down to Niantic.
Well, people must pay for it then. If we're not paying, people who take it, because I see people
Yeah.
waiting for it,
Right.
they must pay themselves for it.
Does it
Yeah,
cover the
but-
same routes?
No.
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 They're,
Does it go to New
they're
London?
the shoreline. No, they're the shoreline group. They kind of jump into town probably to pick 1 or 2 people up, or there's maybe a company that has hired them to bring some workers in.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of even SEAT does that. They contract to go to a certain plant.
Well,
or
it'd be
something.
interesting to know if people use it for in-town transit or they're trying to get to New London.
This route comes from Waterford. It goes out. Oh, actually, it comes from London. Comes through Waterford, through Niantic, and then
Niantic,
goes
then
back out. I think it ends up at the Crystal
I
Mall.
took it once.
Doesn't it go up through Flanders?
Did you?
No?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, okay, so it has to stop
Where'd you
in
end
Flanders.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah, Seat Bus comes up and goes there, but if you wanted to use Seat Bus to go to the Crystal Mall and
I
back,
called the taxi.
you
And it
wind up at the Crystal Mall for
infuriated
over 2
everybody.
hours waiting for the return bus. I mean, it's just not,
More than
it's not,
That's not cool.
yeah, you're right, Mike. Might be
All right,
4
you know,
hours.
let's
We're directing.
it's in there now, and we can when we deliberate, we can talk about that. It would Ledyard pulled out of SEAT a couple of years ago, and of course their share is $30,000. We have the lowest bill from SEAT, and because we get the least amount of service, but I can resign from the board of directors and remove ourselves from the regional effort. There's something altruistic about supporting a regional bus. If we pull out, it really puts SEAT in even though it's only $8,000, it puts them $8,000 behind and paying their bills. I think it's kind of important. I wish this public transportation thing would grow. We know that it's gonna diminish with the state budgets. They're talking about a 50% cut to regional transportation systems in the next couple of years. That will put SEAT out of business. I don't even think we'll have to vote on it in 2 years. I think we'll be out of the bus business in 2 years.
Right.
So, any other questions on
Just
this?
a couple quick ones. And
Yes.
I'm sure we haven't made our pension deposit yet, because we've only spent $51,000 out of the,
It was made this month.
okay, so it just didn't show up in the latest one.
Right, it'll show up at the end of this month.
Okay, and like you say, legal is great. We've only spent 38% of the budget. Inland wetlands is over by $11,000 on this $4,000 budget, and it's not over yet.
Well, what we do is,
We take it from the other funds.
we
and-
will, right.
So there's
Yeah.
room for that one, because we're doing so well in the other areas.
We try to
And how do you predict who's gonna take us to court on what things and what
Right.
decisions, so.
And generally, so really, it's the bottom line that really I have to focus on. We try to categorize them, so we have somewhat of a handle on it and ask department heads to watch that. But you're right, when inland wetlands or zoning, when they used to have the Oswegatchie those things coming up, that would triple the budget, which is what it is.
General government's doing good, only spent 28% of that $145,000.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm sure.
I jump into Dan's office and give free legal advice every time I can.
Could we go back, to 101?
Yes,
Which is under First Selectmen's budget.
yes.
Line 295, the ad hoc committees. The description on that sounds as though we are self-serving and using it for ourselves, when in fact it's there for special committees, short-term committees, and it's only one page. I'd like to see the page reprinted, as the budget's just for us right now. I'd like to see that reprinted with
That's a good
a
point.
more accurate description.
Support for subcommittees and
Uh,
special projects,
Yeah.
Yeah, special projects,
Spec-
short-term committees.
short-term committees,
Sort of like we did with the police study and stuff like that.
subcommittees.
Yeah.
And that is indeed what it's used for, not just the description, but that's a better, that's a better definition. Special projects.
Well, at that point, might as well get descriptions of everything in there. A lot of them that don't have anything.
They got a little soft this year, I agree with you.
Selectmen expenses, there's nothing on there.
Any other comments, questions?
And I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all for your service.